I gave them everything for 11 years. But when they said that at dinner, at 47, I believed that unconditional love and unwavering sacrifice would eventually earn me a cherished place in someone's heart. I was devastatingly wrong. What happened next became the most expensive lesson in human nature I've ever received, and honestly, it was worth every single penny. Have you ever poured your soul into people who saw you as nothing more than a walking ATM? I spent 11 agonizing years thinking that patience, generosity, and genuine care would eventually break through the walls around my stepchildren's hearts. I was living in a fool's paradise, and the awakening was absolutely soul-crushing. Let me paint you the picture of my beautiful delusion. I married Victoria 9 years ago, and she came as a package deal with two teenagers, Sebastian and Scarlett, who were still raw from losing their father. I understood their pain completely. I never tried to replace their dad, never demanded they call me anything other than my first name, Marcus. I simply showed up day after day, year after year, like a steady lighthouse in their storm. When Sebastian needed his car repaired after that fender bender junior year, who covered the $1,200? When Scarlett had that emotional breakdown during her sophomore year of college and needed intensive therapy sessions at $200 a pop, who never questioned a single invoice? When they both needed laptops for school, winter clothes, spring break money, graduation expenses, you name it, I was there with my wallet open and my heart even more open. But here's what I was too blind to see at the time. Every act of generosity was met with the emotional equivalent of a shrug. Every sacrifice was received like it was somehow owed to them. I kept telling myself they were just processing grief differently, that maturity would eventually bring gratitude. God, was I naive? The first crack in my beautiful fantasy appeared about 6 months ago. I was reviewing our family finances, and the numbers were staggering. Over 9 years, I had quietly invested over $87,000 in their lives. College tuition payments, rent subsidies for Sebastian's first apartment, Scarlett's study abroad program in London, therapy bills, car insurance, cell phone plans, the list went on and on. But something felt different in the house. The energy had shifted. Sebastian barely made eye contact during family dinners. Scarlett would answer my questions about her graduate program with one-word responses. Victoria seemed distant, distracted, always buried in her phone. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation, that families go through rough patches. Then came that Sunday evening in March, the evening that obliterated everything I thought I knew about my place in their lives. We were gathered around our dining room table, the same table where we'd celebrated birthdays, discussed dreams, weathered countless storms together. I had just transferred the final payment for Scarlett's graduate program, $9,700, from my personal savings account. The silence at dinner was suffocating. You know that heavy silence that feels like everyone knows something you don't? I tried making conversation about Scarlett's upcoming thesis defense, about Sebastian's new job promotion. Nothing, just forks scraping against plates and the occasional grunt of acknowledgement. Then Scarlett looked up from her barely touched meal, her eyes cold as winter, and said something that still echoes in my mind like a curse. You know, my real father would have done all this anyway. That's what actual parents do for their children. The words hit me like a physical blow. I blinked hard, hoping I'd misheard her. Before I could even process the magnitude of what she just said, Sebastian decided to twist the knife deeper. "Let's stop pretending this is some grand gesture of love," he said, not even bothering to look at me. "You're not our dad. You're just mom's husband. Nothing more, nothing less. We never asked you to play hero." I turned to Victoria, my wife of 9 years, the woman I'd built a life with, desperately searching her face for some sign of support, some indication that she would defend what we'd built together. She sat there, fork frozen halfway to her mouth, staring at her plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. 5 seconds passed. 10 seconds. 15. The silence stretched into eternity. I waited for her to say something, anything. To tell them they were being cruel. To acknowledge the sacrifice. To recognize my humanity. She said nothing. Absolutely nothing. She just sat there, letting their words hang in the air like poison gas. That moment right there was when something fundamental inside me died. Not broke, not bent, but completely died. The realization crashed over me like a tsunami. I had been playing a game where I was the only participant. I had been giving my heart to people who saw me as a convenient resource, not a human being worthy of basic respect. The betrayal was so complete, so thorough, that it took my breath away. These weren't just ungrateful kids acting out. This was a calculated dismissal of 11 years of my life. This was the revelation that every sacrifice had been meaningless, every gesture of love had been wasted on people who were fundamentally incapable of seeing my worth. But here's what they didn't know about me. Here's what they couldn't have predicted. When you push someone past their breaking point, when you utterly demolish their faith in human decency, something interesting happens. You don't get broken, you get clarity. Crystal clear, razor-sharp clarity. That night, lying in bed next to Victoria, who was scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to try to make them understand. I was going to show them exactly what life looked like without their nothing more than mom's husband. The next morning, I started what I now call the Great Recalibration. First stop, my financial records. Sebastian's car, the one I'd co-signed for and had been making payments on? Technically mine. The insurance policy? In my name. His monthly rent assistance? A voluntary gift that could be revoked at any time. I called the dealership that Tuesday morning. I need to arrange a vehicle repossession, I said calmly. The car is in my name, and I'm no longer willing to maintain payments. The process was surprisingly simple. They scheduled a pickup for Thursday afternoon, right outside his apartment complex. Wednesday, I contacted Scarlett's property management company. I'll no longer be covering the monthly rent assistance for Unit 4B, I informed them. The leaseholder will need to handle full payment going forward. Thursday afternoon, Sebastian called me, absolutely hysterical. What the hell, Marcus? They just towed my car. My girlfriend saw the whole thing. This is insane. I'm just mom's husband, remember? I replied calmly. Why don't you ask your real family for help? I'm sure they'll be happy to assist. Friday, Scarlett's panicked text messages started flooding my phone. Marcus, what's happening? The landlord says you canceled the rent assistance? I can't afford this place without help. I replied with surgical precision, you are absolutely right, Scarlett. Real parents take care of these things. Since I'm not your real parent, I thought it was time you experienced what real parental support looks like. But I wasn't done, not even close. See, I had taken detailed records of every penny I'd invested in their lives over the past 9 years. Car payments, insurance, rent assistance, tuition support, therapy bills, emergency loans that were never repaid. When I added it all up, including the interest I could have earned if I'd invested that money instead, we were looking at over $96,000. I had a choice to make with that money. I could let it disappear into the void of their ingratitude, or I could invest it in someone who actually deserved it. Someone who had been overlooked, undervalued, and taken for granted for far too long. Me. That Saturday morning, I booked a trip that would make their jaws drop. Not just any vacation, but a comprehensive, no expense spared, absolutely luxurious celebration of my newfound freedom. 3 weeks in New Zealand, starting with 5 days in Auckland's most exclusive hotel, followed by private helicopter tours over the South Island, wine tastings in Marlborough, adventure sports in Queenstown, and ending with a week in a luxury lodge in Milford Sound. First-class flights both ways, private drivers, Michelin-starred restaurants, spa treatments, adventure excursions. The works, total cost, just over $18,000. Still less than 2 years of their combined support, but infinitely more satisfying. And here's where I might have gotten a little petty, but I regret nothing. I documented every glorious moment on social media. Pictures of me parasailing over crystal blue waters with captions like, "Nothing beats investing in someone who truly appreciates you." Myself. Photos of me enjoying 5-star dining with updates like, "Finally found someone worth spoiling." Me again. The responses from my social media friends were incredible. Dozens of comments celebrating my adventure, asking about my amazing trip, congratulating me on living my best life. It felt intoxicating to be celebrated instead of taken for granted. Victoria saw the posts, of course. Day 3 of my trip, my phone buzzed with her message. Marcus, what's going on? Is this some kind of midlife crisis? I replied from my luxury suite overlooking the Bay of Islands. Not a crisis, darling. This is called clarity. And no, I won't be rushing home to clean up the mess. That's when the real fireworks started. Victoria's messages became increasingly desperate. You're punishing them for being emotional. They're just kids working through their grief. Victoria, I replied, Sebastian is 24 and Scarlett is 26. They're not children. They're adults who made a conscious choice to dehumanize someone who loved them unconditionally. This isn't about emotions. This is about respect. But she wasn't done trying to manipulate me. Her next message was the most revealing of all. You knew they'd never see you as their real father. Why are you acting surprised? I stared at that message for a long time, watching the sunset paint the New Zealand sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Finally, I typed back, "You're absolutely right." I knew they'd never see me as their father, but I thought they might eventually see me as a human being. Apparently, that was too much to ask. I extended my trip by another week, partly because New Zealand is absolutely magical, but mostly because I wasn't ready to return to the toxicity I'd left behind. When I finally came home, I didn't go to the house. Instead, I checked into the Marriott downtown and called my attorney. The conversation with my lawyer was illuminating. "Marcus," he said, "you've been essentially financing adults who have no legal obligation to respect you and no legal claim to your support. You're well within your rights to discontinue all assistance. Victoria and I are now legally separated. Not divorced yet, but the paperwork is in motion. I'm living in a beautiful downtown apartment, and for the first time in 11 years, my bank account is growing instead of shrinking." The aftermath has been exactly what you'd expect. Sebastian is scrambling to find reliable transportation and struggling with his suddenly doubled living expenses. Scarlett moved back in with Victoria temporarily, bringing her graduate school stress and financial anxiety with her. Victoria is discovering exactly how much of their comfortable lifestyle was subsidized by the man they dismissed as nothing more than mom's husband. Here's the part that speaks volumes about their character. In the 6 weeks since I implemented my boundaries, I haven't received a single apology. Not one message acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, they crossed a line. Not one attempt to repair the relationship. Just angry demands for me to stop being dramatic and get over it. Their silence tells me everything I need to know about who they really are. These aren't people who made a mistake in a moment of stress. These are people who fundamentally believe that my role in their lives was to give and give and give while expecting nothing in return. Not even basic human decency. But here's what I've learned from this expensive education in human nature. Some people will take everything you offer and still blame you for not giving more. Some people will mistake your kindness for weakness and your generosity for obligation. And some people will never, ever appreciate what they have until it's permanently gone. I didn't cut them off to punish them. I cut them off because I finally understood that I was enabling their selfishness and subsidizing my own disrespect. I was teaching them that my boundaries were negotiable and my worth was measured solely by my financial contributions. Now I wake up every morning in my peaceful apartment, look at my growing savings account, and feel something I hadn't experienced in years. Self-respect. The knowledge that I'm investing in someone who values what I have to offer. Someone who appreciates my sacrifices. Someone who sees my worth. Me. Would I do anything differently if I could go back? Honestly, no. This painful lesson taught me something invaluable about setting boundaries and recognizing my own worth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling someone else's worst behavior. So here's my question for you, especially if you've lived long enough to understand complicated family dynamics. Have you ever found yourself giving endlessly to people who seemed incapable of appreciating your sacrifices? How did you handle it? What would you have done in my situation? Because I'm curious. Was I wrong to finally demand the respect I'd been giving freely for 11 years? Should I have continued funding their lives while accepting their contempt? Or do you think that sometimes, just sometimes, people need to experience consequences to understand the value of what they've lost? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own experiences with unappreciated sacrifice, please share it. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that our worth isn't measured by how much we're willing to tolerate, but by how well we protect our own dignity. Thanks for listening to my story. It's been surprisingly therapeutic to share it with people who might actually understand the complexity of loving people who seem determined to misunderstand you.